Donald Trump's former lawyer says there are major problems with the special counsel's investigation and prosecution of Donald Trump. We're going to listen to this gentleman speak about this, saying that he testified in the grand jury proceedings and he was asked all sorts of very inappropriate questions, the type of questions that might get a case thrown out if they were to come in the middle of a trial. But because these inquiries are happening in D.C., there is very limited repercussions for doing unethical things, is where this is going. Now, we have other issues in this prosecution, including, was Donald Trump even told that these charges were coming? They're saying that all of this is going to be happening very, very soon. And Trump is saying that he didn't have much notice about this, if any. But we're hearing from places like Sean Hannity and Citizen Free Press. They're saying the radio show just reported that the DOJ has alerted media about a major development soon. And we have another report here from ABC News that says former President Trump received a letter from Special Counsel Jack Smith's office in recent weeks, informing him that he is the target of an ongoing investigation related to the handling of classified documents. They're putting him on notice that they are facing the prospect of indictment. DOJ guidelines state that the prosecutor in the appropriate cases is encouraged to notify such person a reasonable time before seeking indictment to afford them the opportunity to testify before the grand jury. Lawyers for Trump met with the DOJ, and so this thing is getting closer and closer to the wire. And earlier in the week, we even saw Jack Smith, the special counsel, emerge. He was walking down the street, and we got to see new footage of him, and we're like, where the heck did this guy come from? So the questions are whether or not Donald Trump has been notified. Looks like he has. Multiple people are confirming this now from the New York Times and elsewhere. But what was interesting is about the timing on this thing, because Maggie Haberman, somebody on Twitter who has a lot of access to Donald Trump for some reason, he talks to her, but she says, Trump tells me minutes ago he has not been told he's getting indicted when contacted. He said it's not true, he said, adding again that he hasn't done anything wrong. Trump's statement came amid a report from one of his allies that he has been told this. CNN, WAPO, other outlets have all reported that federal officials have been building a case. When I asked if he had directly been told he's a target, he demurred, saying, I don't talk directly to prosecutors. Now, others are saying he has been informed. And so we'll go through the rest of it. The New York Times, they said that their sources, and they're getting leaks from everybody, remember, they report the following. Prosecutors do in fact tell Trump that he's a target. They got the notice from special counsel Jack Smith suggesting an indictment is on the horizon. We don't know when. They've informed him that he's the target. Notification was sent to Trump's team by Jack Smith's office. The clearest signal yet. Charges are coming. Remained unclear when Trump's team was told that he was the target of this, but the notice suggested that the prosecutors working for Smith had largely completed their investigation and were moved towards bringing an indictment. Prosecutors indicated that they're scrutinizing Trump all over the place. We've seen a lot of these stories. Notifying a potential defendant gives them the opportunity to appear. On Monday, 3 lawyers, Trusty, Rowley, and Halligan, met for almost 2 hours with the Justice Department. And part of their meeting was because they were trying to show that there was misconduct that was being presented in Jack Smith's investigation. Several witnesses appeared in front of the grand jury in Miami. Taylor Budowich was one of them, one of Trump's former spokespeople. Aides and advisors to Trump spent the day in tension. John Solomon, a conservative journalist, published an article claiming that prosecutors were moving forward towards indicting Mr. Trump imminently. Trump again told the Times, not true. And that's what Maggie Haberman was telling us about. So Trump did respond to a lot of this on Truth Social. Here's what he said. Wow, this is turning out to be one of the greatest and most vicious instances of election interference in the history of our country. Says, remember, I'm beating wrong in the polls, but more importantly, I'm leading Biden by a lot. Also, and perhaps most importantly, they are launching all of the many fake investigations against me right smack in the middle of my campaign. By design, something which is unheard of and not supposed to happen. DOJ, FBI, New York AG, New York DA, Atlanta DA, and fascists all, is what Trump said. Right, and I think this is exactly by design. The analogy we've used is like a chessboard. They're just stacking the pieces around in all the different jurisdictions. He says, shocking. One of the top prosecutors at the Department of Justice was reportedly so obsessed with getting Trump that he tried to bribe and intimidate a lawyer representing someone being targeted and harassed. to falsely accuse and fabricate a story about Trump. Crime that doesn't exist. He says this criminal and salacious act from within the DOJ has brought shame and embarrassment to this once great and respected institution. Because of this, there is now extreme turmoil inside the DOJ. He continues saying, a top, overzealous, and dishonest DOJ prosecutor offered a witness's lawyer an important judgeship in the Biden administration if his client, quote, flips on President Trump, who has done nothing wrong. The highly respected lawyer was incensed and disgusted at this corrupt and illegal offer. The fake case against me must be immediately dropped, and the Inspector General should launch an investigation into this and the many other all too obvious wrongdoings and crimes taking place at the DOJ and the FBI. And what has been so interesting about this is, Trump has been on the receiving end of a number of false and fraudulent investigations, many hoaxes, all claiming Trump is this, Trump is that. And he's been basically vindicated in all of them. And we saw what happened in 2016. We saw what they did in 2020. We know that the FBI, CIA, DOJ will collude with the social media companies. They'll do everything to try to stop him from winning. But now, all of a sudden, these agencies are legitimate? What? Bill Barr is going to come out and tell us that these things are perfectly acceptable and normal? I don't believe it for a second. They're the same institutions. Not much has changed. It's a big, giant, cavernous, sulfurous agency, believe me. So this continues. He pays respect to Pat Robertson. May he rest in peace. And there were some other reactions to this, and Trump will, I'm sure, provide more thoughts on it. But Trump's lawyers were also out communicating their thoughts on what is happening as the special counsel case proceeds. For some reaction, we have Alina, Habba, in the House. And here is what this extremely astute observer of the law has to say.
Look, there's a lot of things on the table right now. The most recent thing they're going to claim to indict him for is like the Espionage Act. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we don't know that. I mean, I've heard
kidding.
that obviously being floated around. Imagine we have Hillary Clinton, you have Obama, you have Biden, you have Bush. Tons of people that have had declassification, clarification issues with NARA, which effectively is all it should or would have been if he was not Donald Trump. So if they do come out with an indictment, I can tell you that it is complete mishandling and weaponization of the DOJ, because we've seen this exact problem with other presidents and they're not treated the same.
Well, Bill Clinton was one of those examples where it was actually litigated, where it was found that a president has the right to choose to take or not take what he feels. How important is it? Like,
Bill Clinton paid $850,000 to Paula Jones, and that was okay. Like, look at all of the evidence. If you're Donald Trump, you will not be treated the same. That is un-American. It is not allowed.
Yeah, this was interesting. MSNBC, all the other mainstream media, they are freaking out. This is like pure survival for them. Yeah. They warned of a retribution president. Watch this.
Oh, God.
You've said that Trump poses a near existential threat to the rule of law.
Think about what 4 years of a retribution presidency might look like.
Yeah, I know. We're excited.
Yep.
I know. I can't wait for it, man. It's going to be good, Comey. We're pretty much like kids at a candy store. It's like going to Disneyland tomorrow, except the old Disneyland before it was whatever they're doing over there now.
I want to see what 4 years of a retribution, because they're going to do away with guys like that who don't support Americans.
He is one of the worst. And we saw that come out in the Durham report. Obviously, there was a suit that we brought exactly saying that. And he's nervous for his own neck. And you know what? Maybe he should be. I don't know. But at the same time, we all need to be concerned, because this cannot be the way the American legal system operates.
Yeah, and I think that's why they're kicking and screaming, because they're like, if this guy
have
gets
whistleblowers.
He's going to remove the 7th floor of the FBI. Like, physically, the whole floor comes off.
I could just think the line, the list is getting longer and longer, but that's not really what it's about. It's not about retribution. It's about saving America, which is really what he wants to do.
But that's what they are. It's the bureaucracy, deep state, whatever you want to call it, versus the rest of the country.
Right, but the country is tainted, and it's the words I want to use I can't use on TV, but it's
I know exactly
it's
what
tainted.
you mean. Yeah, I am just as tired of this witch hunt as you are.
Alina Habba, what a gentlewoman, not using words to describe the DOJ that many of us would like to use. So we have more reaction. Now, Steve Bannon has long been suspected to have been in the scope of the investigation from the DOJ. We're now learning that he was also subpoenaed in the grand jury probe. Here's what we know. The Washington, D.C.-based grand jury subpoenaed Steve Bannon in connection with the investigation. Two sources are telling NBC News. The subpoena for documents and testimony was sent out late last month, the news sources said. Grand jury investigating Trump's actions surrounding J6 in connection with efforts to interfere is separate from the grand jury that heard testimony on Wednesday. A spokesman for the special counsel declined to comment. Bannon has already previously been charged with contempt of Congress, already convicted, sentenced to 4 months in prison, but sentence has been suspended pending appeal. So the special counsel prosecution continues to heat up, saying that there is major problems with the inquiry. But the biggest problem comes from Trump's former lawyer. This is Tim Parlatore, and he's explaining that when he was called in there, like Steve Bannon and like others, to testify, there were major problems. Here's what he said.
The Trump attorneys have raised questions about prosecutorial misconduct in this case. What did you witness?
I witnessed a lot of misconduct.
What did that look like?
So it's been reported, I went before the grand jury myself. I was not subpoenaed. I went involuntarily as, in the place of a custodian of records. And I was really stunned by what I saw in the grand jury room by the conduct of the prosecutors. They made many attempts to try to get at privileged communications. They would ask me about conversations with my client. They would make improper references to the jury, trying to mislead them about that. At one point, it got to the level where, they're asking me this again, and then they'll turn to the grand jury and they say, so you're refusing to provide this information. Like, no, I'm not refusing to provide. The ethical rules prohibit me. Even if the answer to this question is helpful, I'm not allowed to give it. And I turned to the jury and I said, and she knows it. She knows that it's an improper question. It's an improper inference. That then led to an exchange where she tried saying, well, the privilege has exceptions. It could be waived, yes. Well, if the president's so cooperative, why won't he waive privilege and allow you to tell the grand jury about his conversations?
Why does that cross a legal red line?
That crosses a major red line as far as implying guilt to a jury based on the invocation of a constitutional right. It's the kind of thing that if that had happened in a trial court, the judge would have immediately stopped everything, probably declared a mistrial. And it's the kind of thing that, quite frankly, an attorney, a prosecuting attorney who willfully does that type of thing would potentially face discipline. And I think
because it's completely unethical conduct. Okay, so let's just put this in a different context. You are in a criminal court of law. We know how important your right to remain silent is. It's incredibly important. So important, in fact, that our courts have said that the prosecutor can't even comment on that, right? If you're sitting there, if you cover any one of our trials, we've talked about many of them here. Let's pick one, the Derek Chauvin trial, the George Floyd situation. He chose not to speak. He chose not to take the stand and testify. And the prosecutor could not comment on that. In closing arguments, could never go in front of the jury and say, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, you saw all the evidence here. And if Derek Chauvin really didn't murder George Floyd and didn't put his knee on his neck and all the things, well, then he would have stood here before you and told you exactly what his position was, and he could have told you the truth, and he didn't do that, and therefore you should convict him, find him guilty because he didn't come and speak before you, therefore he's a bad person. That would be a mistrial like hard, right? Everybody would be screaming from the rooftops. And, unless that prosecutor was fresh out of law school or something like that, they would know better, and the state bar would have a big problem with that. But those same types of procedures apparently are fair game when you are special counsel prosecutors and you're going after this guy in a DC circuit court. He just said, well, that's executively privileged. And this prosecutor, well, I don't care. If Trump was honest, wouldn't he waive that? And you go, wait, that's not what that is for. We don't just waive things to exonerate ourselves. We adhere to those to protect ourselves, because that's not how this works, right? It's a disgusting thing. Prosecutors should know better, but they're not doing that in this case. And he's saying that this is serious misconduct. And I would presume that a lot of that is going to show up in the grand jury transcripts. And we're going to be able to see that and parse out what the actual misconduct was, if we see it, if this stuff is not sealed out the wazoo to keep us all from following along. They've done this in other cases. Remember how much of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was sealed and redacted? Huge portions of it. Can you imagine what they're going to do in this case? They don't want us to follow along and see this activity on full display. That's why it's all being done in secret. We'll see if any of that changes, but the misconduct apparently exists, and it doesn't surprise me a bit. We'll continue to cover this as the indictment looms.